There's been a lot said about Epic Universe, and of course, many people, including myself, are looking very forward to this new park opening. But another thing that I've talked about a few times, but I don't know how many people have really talked about, is that Disney seems that they're not worried about Epic Universe, and pretty much, in my estimation, underestimating it, which is an interesting way to go about it, considering that Disney's never had this level of competition, especially from Universal Studios or really anybody else in the theme park space in Orlando. I would take a guess, though, that they are actually worried about this behind closed doors, but the public persona that they put on is that they have nothing to worry about. They don't have to rebuttal to Epic Universe, and in fact, they saw it coming over a decade ago, if you listen to Bob Iger. But I don't think that's necessarily the case, of course, because, well, reality can set in pretty quickly. So we have a video here from Attraction Ideas, and it says Disney World is underestimating Epic Universe. So I figure let's watch this video and react to it and give some thoughts. So that's what we're going to do today. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic, and we will get right into the video here.
Ever since Universal announced Epic Universe back in 2019, Disney has kept quiet on the subject, and understandably so. Bringing any sort of attention to your competitor's brand new theme park is only going to help to promote it, which is the last thing that Disney wants to do. However, what this has resulted in is a lot of confusion from shareholders about what Disney's stance is on the topic. Are they preparing for it? Are they intimidated by it? Do they see it as a threat?
Well, according to Bob Iger, they saw this coming a decade ago and nothing to worry about.
I think it's actually going to be something that helps them because it's only going to bring attention to the Central Florida market, bring in more tourists that will ultimately find their way to Disney World.
That is what Disney is either expecting, or I suppose their best case scenario is that there. I think they're expecting to see a bump. That may be why at least they don't put on the public persona of being worried, but I don't necessarily, we'll see what else he says about this, but I don't necessarily think that is going to be the case. It could be they see a little bit of a bump, but I don't think they're going to see as much as they might anticipate.
Or are they just ultimately not seeing it as any sort of major factor to worry about at all? And it's not like we've been able to glean a whole lot from what Disney's been doing at the parks, as much of their major investments came towards the end of the 2010s, and their pipeline for future attractions up until very recently has looked extremely barren. And even the stuff that Disney is either currently teasing or is anticipated to announce at D23 later this year.
I should note this video is not brand new. This was before D23, but this one people had sent around to me, so it's why we're still reacting to it. So some of this information is not going to be up to, the latest thing in the last month or 2 months or something like that, but I still think it's a good video.
Ultimately, are not going to open up for several years down the line, as Disney is notorious for being extremely long in their construction times, and none of these projects have broken ground yet. So on one hand,
they still have not. And yes, they are very slow with construction.
And it seems that Disney is not at all intimidated by Epic Universe, as they're giving them at least a few years of just open season with next to no new projects opening up at Disney World to compete with it. But on the other hand, we know Disney has major projects down the line. We know Disney is committing several $billion towards the park division over the next 10 years. It seems that they are anticipating there is going to be some reason to have to invest in the parks in the coming years. Is that reason Universal? Is that reason Epic Universe? We don't know, because Disney has kept their mouth shut.
I mean, so Disney hasn't said, but it's obvious that that's the reason why. If you look at the track record since Universal started doing the Wizarding Worlds, Disney has essentially been trying to answer for those. So when those opened up, then they introduced, that's why they did Pandora initially, and that was a licensing deal before they bought Fox, so that they reached out, they did that. That took about 5 to 6 years to get built. Then they rebutted with the new edition of Wizarding World from Universal, and then that's when they introduced Galaxy's Edge, Toy Story Land, and those lands. And now with Epic Universe, getting ready to open, they now have said they're building 3 new lands in 3 different parks. So clearly, in my opinion, we probably wouldn't have any of the lands that Disney has built, or maybe some, I'm not going to say none, but most of the lands that Disney has built in the past decade, if it was not for Universal and what they've been doing. Because I've made the argument for a while that Universal is driving the creativity in the theme park market. Disney still has the market share, but they do not have the creativity, and they are definitely, in my opinion, again, I think they are following suit on what Universal's been doing, because Disney doesn't want to take any chances. And as a company, they're very reactionary to begin with. So I think that's what's been going on.
shut on the subject, and they've been doing things that seem to be conflicting against each other as far as whether or not they see Epic Universe as a threat or they don't. But just recently, we finally got a statement from Disney about how they feel about Epic Universe and how it's going to affect their business going forward. After all, Universal has been dropping teasers, dropping concept art, and showing off the current construction of the park. We're 1 year away from the park opening. The cat is...
At this point, it's about 6-7 months away from park opening, because we do have an opening date now of May 22nd.
Out of the bag. There's no reason for Disney to keep their mouth shut on this any longer, and they need to actually address shareholders and say, this is what's going on. And let me just preface this statement by saying this is not some sort of level-headed statement. This might be the most delusional, insane theme park take I have ever read. I thought about it for a few days. Yeah, I think it might be the most insane thing I've ever read. And it's made more insane by the fact that it's coming straight from Disney themselves. So, without further ado, here's the statement. A Disney spokesperson in an interview with the Wall Street Journal had this to say about Epic Universe, and I quote, "Epic is Universal playing catch-up on a decade of non-stop development at Walt Disney World." Now, don't worry folks, I'm not going to blow a gasket just yet. I will stay cool, calm, and collected while I explain why this is an insane thing to say. No, I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to stay calm.
He's right. It is an insane thing to say, especially considering what we just talked about a moment ago, which is Disney. They're going to. I'm sure what he's probably going to go over here is they're going to try and take credit for all the things they've been building the past 10 years. But what they're not going to mention is they built those things reacting to things that Universal was doing. So it's I don't really know. I remember reading this quote and just thinking like it's the most delusional thing I think I've ever heard. And obviously, it's just Disney as a company doesn't ever take an L. And so if you remember when the Star Cruiser closed, the statement that Josh D'Amaro gave was essentially not that it was a failure, but it was a great opportunity and they're going to learn from it. You would assume that the Star Cruiser is a success in their eyes from the things that they say, even though it closed or it was announced to close before it was even a year old. So Disney just will not ever hardly take an L. I don't remember the last time I ever heard them say, hey, we messed up. We're going to do better, whatever the case may be. So this is yet again them just always trying, and not only did Iger say they knew about Epic Universe for a decade, even though they didn't build anything in anticipation of it opening. They always do this in terms of like, we knew everything, we know everything, and you're not going to get one by on us, even though I think reality would show otherwise.
But clearly, what Disney's trying to portray with this statement is that they don't care about Epic Universe. They don't care about Universal. They don't see them as a threat whatsoever. It's not going to impact them at all because Disney is ahead of the curve. Now, that being said, before I run too far with this, let's just be clear. This is one spokesperson saying this. Yes, they are representing the company, but I'm sure there's some people in leadership or Imagineering or park management who don't share this same opinion. However, what it also tells us is that either one, Disney is unbelievably delusional.
You could probably stop there.
Or they're massive liars.
That's even better. Or that one too. I don't know which one would be worse. They're delusional or they're just liars. I don't know which one is worse. I suppose delusional would just be you believing in your product so much that you can't you just can't imagine a scenario where a competitor would actually make an impact on you. But the other one I think is probably more accurate, is that they're just lying because they're not going to say, yeah, we're pretty worried about Epic Universe because, well, you can see the press would probably run with that and things that they would hear.
Because what Disney is trying to push here is revisionist history. It is simply not what has played out. It is not what has transpired. Sure, when we look at the decade that Disney is talking about here, yeah, Disney's built a whole lot more. They built 3 brand new lands. They've added a whole bunch of attractions. You could maybe make the argument that Universal's additions maybe were higher in quality overall, even though there were certainly some stinkers in there.
I mean, Fast and Furious is a terrible ride. I mean, I would argue Skull Island, it's okay. Now it's not even 3D. It's okay. Fast and Furious is terrible. Jimmy Fallon is terrible. Born Spectacular is fantastic. Villain Con, I guess the jury's still out. I think it's more, it's a family type of attraction, but at least as these things open, you've got Volcano Bay Hagrid's and Velocicoaster and Born Spectacular are for sure home runs. Those are fantastic rides. On Disney's side, like Toy Story Land is fine. I think you can definitely tell the budget cuts there. Pandora is actually a great land. Galaxy's Edge, I have talked about before. I'm going to do a whole video on Galaxy's Edge. There are so many problems with Galaxy's Edge. The fact that if you would have envisioned a Star Wars land 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what it would look like to what we actually got, I think is a travesty, but I won't go into that. So personally, I don't think it's great. Mickey's Runaway Railway is okay. Ratatouille and Tron, they're just ported over from overseas. Guardians of the Galaxy is a fantastic roller coaster. I will give them credit there.
And maybe even you could argue that maybe Universal built a similar amount since they built a whole brand new water park on top of everything else they built.
It's a very good point. They have I don't know how many attractions are in Volcano Bay, but there's a lot.
But I think you could give Disney the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, they built more than Universal did in this past decade. And thus, this is where Disney gets off saying that, oh, Universal's playing catch up because we did more than them in the last decade. Therefore, Epic Universe is just them evening the playing field as far as new additions go. And if they're just evening the playing field as far as new additions, then guess what? They're not making up any ground on us whatsoever, and we still are by far the industry leader. But what prompted Disney to build all these new attractions, all these new lands, and invest so much money into the parks? They just did it out of the blue? Really? What if we extend the timeline just a couple years outside of that decade mark? Oh,
Yep.
What's here? It's the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. It's almost like what Disney was building in the early stages of this past decade was in response to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, aka it was Disney playing catch up with the massive investments that Universal had made that made them actual direct competitors of Disney for the first time in history.
I completely agree. And honestly, look at the timeline on Fantasyland. Like that, I think Fantasyland took almost 8 years to build, if not longer. It took a long time for them to build that. So yeah, I think if you expand that timeline out, it's very evident that Disney was trying to essentially answer for the things that Universal was doing.
But no, according to Disney, those meant nothing. Those had no impact on the theme park landscape whatsoever. And really, the timeline as far as when things actually started to matter was 10 years ago, guys. Anything before that? No. That doesn't matter. What are you talking about? Wizarding World of what? I've never heard of the guy. What are you talking about? So, really, Disney? You want to talk about who's playing catch-up? You just finished catching up with Universal after the investments in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and everything else they've done since then. Now you're telling me that them building a whole brand new theme park is them somehow catching up with you? How is that even possible? And I know you don't want me to bring up the attendance numbers, because Universal has already been gaining significant ground on you even without Epic Universe in the conversation. In the latest attendance numbers we have access to, Islands of Adventure had more
So this is a little outdated because the 2023 numbers came out and Universal did see a little bit of a drop, as did some of the other parks of Disney. But I've also argued as well, I wasn't going to be surprised if some of those numbers fell off because, whatever you want to say about travel after, whatever you want to call it, revenge travel or whatever that case may be. But I also figured as well, like with Epic Universe opening, I feel like there's a lot of people that were probably putting off trips, especially I'll be curious about this year's numbers leading up to Epic Universe opening, because I feel like if you were going to drop the money to go spend a week or however long you're going to spend at Universal or even Disney for that matter, a lot of people that were going to do both would just say, I'm going to wait until Epic Universe is open and then, go on our trip, spend that money, especially during an economic time period where people are being a little bit more frugal about how they're spending their money. It makes sense that people would want to get the most out of their money and just say, okay, we're going to wait until this new park's open and then take our trip to Universal and perhaps even Disney as well.
Attendance than 3 of the 4 Walt Disney World parks, with of course the one exception being Magic Kingdom. And Universal Studios Florida was not too far behind, only being behind Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios.
The other thing I will point out as well is that if you look at those numbers and compare them to, pre-2019, Universal has recovered, and even I think they're a little bit above the numbers they had in, say, 2019, whereas Disney has not yet recovered the attendance numbers that they lost from COVID. They've charged more money for people as they charge now for like Genie Plus, Lightning Lane, things like that. So they've made more money in that period of time, which I again, I think is short-sighted in terms of trying to squeeze a bunch of money out of people that come into your parks. But the attendance numbers, they have not recovered those. And in fact, I think it's going to continue, but Animal Kingdom being one that has really fallen off, especially in, say, 2023. And I think that's going to continue, especially as that park's under construction. And if people are splitting time, going to Epic Universe and then maybe going over to Disney, Animal Kingdom is going to be the park that is really going to see a big hit on the attendance numbers.
So when you said that Universal was playing catch-up, you really should have been more so referring to attendance as opposed to attractions built, because Universal actually is catching up to you in attendance. And once Epic Universe opens, let me tell you, if things play out the way that Universal's hoping they do, that gap is going to continue to narrow. But clearly,
I am curious where Epic will end up. Obviously, it's not opening like a full year of attendance, so the 2025 numbers, it'll be I'll be curious where they end up. Like, say, a full year of Epic Universe being open. I do wonder, does it challenge Magic Kingdom? Like, I'm imagining it'll be in the top 5 for sure, but where does it end up in terms of 1, 2, 3 slots? I think that'll be the thing that's very interesting to see, is like where that cracks into that top 5.
Based on this statement, Disney has zero faith in Universal being able to pull any rabbit out of their hat. They don't think that Epic Universe is going to play any significant role in teetering Disney's business, short-term or long-term. But I'm not just making this claim based on this one statement alone, or even the actions or lack thereof that they've been taking at the parks. I'm also basing it on what Disney CEO Bob Iger had to say about Epic Universe recently as well, where basically he said, yeah, we've known about Epic Universe for 10 years now. We're fully prepared for it, and we are not at all worried about it. Which, of course, is what you love to hear from your leader. You want to hear that you're not worried about the competition. You're not unprepared for what they have to throw at you. But let me ask Bob Iger, what have you done to prepare for Epic Universe? Are you talking about the 3 major lands you built at the end of the 2010s that by the time Epic Universe opens are going to be 6 to 8 years old? Are you talking about the stuff that you have in the pipeline right now that's not going to open up until years after Epic Universe opens? How exactly are you prepared for Epic Universe? Because it kind of seems like to me, you're just letting Universal do whatever they want with Epic Universe and have free reign of the open market. So once again,
completely agree. And that statement by Iger, I'd mentioned it earlier, is so ludicrous to actually think. Now, I'm sure they probably had an idea. Like, I don't think it was really a big secret that Universal was really looking at doing another theme park. So in terms of that, sure, they knew something they were looking to do, but to act like they knew everything that they were going to be doing with Epic Universe and how that was going to look, and that they're just, we're prepared for it. We knew this was coming, all these things like that. And then also when you look at, like he was saying here, I figured just really that they would have announced things at D23 2 years ago. They waited until 2024 D23 to announce these things that are going to come to the parks that are not going to be ready. I just don't think any timetable is realistic that's within 5 years. I mean, Disney's construction is slow to begin with, on top of the fact that they're going to be doing, construction at the same time in 3 separate theme parks. So typically even one thing at a time, they take a long time on. And if you look at Epcot and you look at Tron, and sure, they had COVID in there. So did Universal. They took a little bit of period during, 2020, but they picked right back up with construction. So if you look at Fantasyland as well, Fantasyland took a long time to build. So Disney has a track record of being very slow with construction, on top of the fact that they really need these things to open quickly as to have an answer for Epic Universe, because I've brought up the point many times. If Epic Universe, Disney has 2 scenarios, I suppose, of many, but one being they see a bump from Epic Universe, they don't take that much of an attendance hit, and then during that time period, these things slowly come open, and then they're able to hopefully, lure people back into the parks or get, more people coming in. But the downside that for them is, if Epic Universe is a massive success, it draws a lot of people in and it hits Disney's numbers and drops their attendance. That's a scenario where A, that's bad for Disney, but B, what do? They have nothing opening. They're going to have shows and parades, but that's not going to be anything that is going to lure people over from Epic Universe and be like, oh yeah, let's go check out shows and parades. So other than massive discounts that they can run, they probably will run, they're not going to have any attractions ready, in my opinion, at this point, until you're looking closer to 2030. I mean, I think that's where most of this lies. If they get it done ahead of time, then okay, that's fine. But just going off of their previous track record, I'm not going to sit here and think that any of this is going to be open in 2 to 3 years.
I asked the question, is this just delusion, Or are they actively just putting on a facade for the shareholders, acting like, yeah, we're ready for Epic Universe, when really they know that they are not?
I think we all know the answer to that, but I think it's obviously they're trying to save face, and it's a facade.
But maybe I'm being too harsh on Disney. Maybe they're right to underestimate Epic Universe. Maybe they don't need to invest massive amounts of money into the parks in order to compete with Universal, especially considering that Epic Universe is going to likely be a tide that raises all ships, at least in the short term. Maybe they're right to believe that no matter what Universal does, they'll never reach the heights of Disney World. But let me tell you a story of the last time Disney doubted Universal. It came in 2007 when Universal announced the Wizarding World of Harry Potter was coming to Islands of Adventure. And what did Disney do when they heard this news? They kicked their feet up on their ottoman and they took a nap. They literally could care less. I mean, J.K. Rowling came to them first and said, hey, I want to do a Harry Potter theme park land. And they said, we'll give you a teacups ride. Is that good enough? And she said, nope. And she walked right down the street to Universal. And they said, okay, big whoop. We don't care. We don't think your property's worth anything anyways. That's why we offered you basically just a teacup ride. And we're going to move on with our day. We don't care. Okay, big whoop. But once construction photos of this project started to come out and more buzz was being built up for it, Disney started to get a little worried. That's when they start putting New Fantasyland into production. That's when they start to crack a deal with James Cameron to get Avatar into the parks.
Yep.
They're starting to get a little worried. They're actually starting to get worried that Harry Potter might do something.
I suppose in Disney's defense on some level, not that I'm looking to run to Disney's defense about anything, but until the Wizarding World, like the first one they built, opened up, I mean, Universal had never done anything on that scale. And so I suppose just going off of past behavior and like their past track record, there really probably wasn't much that Disney, in terms of maybe to be worried about. And Disney a lot of times everyone thinks like they do. So they're thinking, oh, they're just probably going to do a ride here. Like if you look at, again, at what Universal's done, like Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley are very new in terms of the way in which they design things. But you got a lot of people that have left Disney from Imagineering that have gone over to Universal. So that's one thing about it. But I think that you could have a defense for that on some level. But one time is one thing, but to continually keep doing it is a completely, different scenario, and then you would just say that's just bad management at that point.
And then, once the Wizarding World of Harry Potter opens and shatters records for Universal and brings new attendance to the park that they had never seen previously, that's when everyone...
The number is exactly, they saw like almost a 40% increase in attendance and maintained it. So that was how much of an effect it was for Universal.
At Disney started to scramble. And that's why we see all of these projects like Toy Story Land, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and all these individual attractions get thrown into production and eventually come out later in the decade. Why did it take so long to respond? Because these projects were not even put into development until after the Wizarding World of Harry Potter had already opened.
Almost seems like deja vu.
Leading to Disney, of course, taking their normal amount of time to build new attractions, which is forever, and resulting in them coming out way later than the Wizarding World of Harry Potter did, giving those lands and Universal free reign to build market share and grow their attendance with very little pushback from Disney.
It's a great point, and it's something that I've been saying for months, if not over a year now, which is this same scenario is essentially Disney, even if the new things that they're building are a success, they're essentially giving Universal just a free run at the next, in my estimation, again, 3 to 5 years with whatever impact Epic Universe is going to have.
Ultimately, Disney took a reactionary approach, and it cost them. Universal gained a whole bunch of market share and attendance they would not have gotten otherwise if Disney had projects of their own taking the spotlight away from Universal and the Harry Potter lands, and leading to people visiting Disney instead of more people getting a chance to taste Universal and enjoy it enough to where they would end up coming back year after year. And
that was before Disney really got in terms of the price hikes and things that they've been doing, which I think is now yet another layer to this and brings in a whole another segment of this issue. Is not only Universal, the things that they're doing, but now with Disney essentially in the last 5 years changing how everything is done in the parks, has turned off a lot of people to Disney, and a lot of people are looking to Universal. And if you just even price out Epic Universe tickets versus Disney tickets right now, it's still cheaper to go to Universal. So you have a brand new theme park on top of it's easier to go to Universal. Like there's a lot of things outside of just the attractions themselves that is, giving a lot of people reason to at least try out Universal.
This statement just solidified what my worst fear for Disney was, and that's that they would repeat the past and once again take a reactionary approach to another big swing from Universal.
Yep.
Last time, it cost them dearly. And now, on a bigger swing from Universal, Disney is daring to take another doubt Universal type of approach to the situation. I mean, I just don't understand it, because think about how costly that mistake was to doubt Universal in the first place. Disney had no competition whatsoever to speak of in the Orlando market before Harry Potter took off. They had none, absolutely zero. They were literally sitting on the top of the mountain, and it was Universal, SeaWorld, and whoever else fighting for the scraps to be added on to the end of a Disney World trip. It was Disney World at the top of the mountain, and they were practically a monopoly in the market. And now you actually have a direct competitor because you doubted that Universal had the capabilities to compete with you. And now you're doing it again. And if Epic Universe is a success, holy cow, now there's really no looking back. Because now it's not just a case of, oh, you've introduced a competitor in the market. Now you have somebody who's actually coming for your top spot. This is not just somebody who's coming for a chunk of your market share. This is somebody who's going for the grand prize. They're going for the crown. They want to be king of the hill. And you just keep letting them make swings and try and take home run shots on you while you're throwing meatballs at them.
It's a great analogy. And I'm shaking my head in agreement with most of this video. I completely agree. I actually think even if Universal was just making Super Nintendo World or one of these lands by themselves, that would be an issue for Disney alone, let alone a brand new theme park with all these new rides and attractions and lands that they have coming.
But Disney knows this. They see the writing on the wall. They see Epic Universe being built. They see the teasers Universal's doing. Why do you think that all of a sudden they're investing $60 billion in the parks? Why do you think all of a sudden we're starting to see teasers and announcements for new projects coming forward? Because Disney has entered reactionary mode. They are starting to realize, oh wait, Epic Universe could be a problem for us, like they were doing when Wizarding World of Harry Potter was being built, and are now greenlighting projects that previously, they just couldn't find the funding for. They just couldn't make the funding come over. They had to invest in other things in the company, guys. But now that Epic Universe is 1 year away, now you found the money when these projects that you're putting money towards are not going to open for another 3 to 5 years, at which point, guess what? The same exact thing that happened with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, where it had years to run with next to no response from Disney, is going to happen exactly the same way with Epic Universe, where Disney's going to have nothing new on their plate, and if anything, it's actually going to have multiple parts of their park closed, like Dinoland USA, while Epic Universe is brand spanking new. And of course, will garner all the attention, meaning, guess what? Universal's going to gain a whole bunch of market share before Disney does anything to slow up that process.
And not only that, by the time Disney gets done with all whatever projects that they're, just introduced, I really do believe Universal is going to add things into their existing parks, Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure. Big rumors out there about Pokemon taking over Springfield. There's, again, the rumors of Zelda going into Lost Continent. I really do think Universal is going to go back into the existing parks, fill those out more to try and balance out all those parks, because I think some people point to Epic Universe is going to cannibalize, Universal's attendance. But I don't think it's as much of a fear as some of the people say, because you're already talking about two theme parks that are, top 10 theme parks in the entire world. In some years have been top 5 in attendance. So I don't think Epic Universe coming in is necessarily going to mean that it's a bad thing for the existing parks, especially how Universal is doing the ticket packages. Because again, you've got Wizarding World of Harry Potter in both of those parks. So, people do want to see those things, but they definitely need to add new things into those existing parks, which I think they will do. So by the time Disney gets done with whatever they're doing as a response to Epic Universe, Universal very well may open up these new lands or already have them open or doing expansion paths in Epic Universe. And I agree. I think Disney is in this reactionary loop where they're just constantly reacting to Universal. They're not innovating. And because of that, even though they have the market share still, I agree with them. Universal is going for that crown. And I don't know how many more times this cycle can play out before Disney really starts, feeling the negative impacts of that.
And as we saw last time, once Universal started gaining market share, even when they weren't building major groundbreaking projects like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, they were still continuing to gain attendance and gain market share on you while you were barely.
I mean, you can just look at that. I mean, just look at those numbers. Like, I mean, it's hard to argue. If I know there's some people that don't like to talk about that, but it's definitely hard to argue that Universal has been eating into Disney's market share.
Moving the needle in the attendance market. As the holy text in The Great Gatsby stated, you can't repeat the past. And yet somehow Disney is proving F. Scott Fitzgerald wrong by repeating the past here in the modern age. Congratulations, Disney. So, sorry for ranting like a madman, but that statement just blew my mind. Disney's decision-making recently has been absolutely questionable, to say the least. And I think one of those decisions that I found to be most baffling is replacing Dinoland USA right now. I made a whole video talking about that if you want to know why that's stupid. You should be in the middle of the screen right now. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'll see you all next time. Peace.
It's a really good video. Again, it's by Attraction Ideas called Disney World is Underestimating Epic Universe. I'll put a link into it in the description. You can go check it out. But I mean, I agree with most of the things he's saying, and I've been saying the same things for a long period of time. So when it comes to like the whys, it's it falls into, is it incompetence? Like, I wouldn't necessarily just say it's incompetence. Well, it depends on who you ask. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't think it's incompetence, because surely they can look at what they're doing and understand that it's something people enjoy. I think a lot of it is just hubris. And again, if you look at a sports analogy, the top team, it's very easy to get complacent and just be like, we're already at the top. What's it matter? And Universal is much more like one of those younger, hungry teams that is wanting to win. And I'm not saying that Disney is ever going to not have the main market share in Orlando. It's definitely possible that Universal could take that. But I don't think Disney thinks that. I think Disney just thinks we inherently will always have this. And so even if Universal does really cool stuff, like, we'll be fine. It's no big deal. Just keep raising ticket prices, which they just came out this last week, and they're raising prices on everything yet again in 2025 in the same year that Epic Universe is opening. So to me, it doesn't seem like that they're learning or they're even really reacting much to it. I think they just assume that they're always just going to have this attendance because I guess if you look at the historically speaking, they kind of always have, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be there. And I definitely think Disney is playing a risky game here with this because, again, you're going to have to be, I guess you could say, give Disney the best circumstance possible. A 3-year run, I think it's going to be closer to 5+ years, but 3 years before any of their stuff is open, that they're going to give Epic Universe in terms of the market share, the attendance, whatever impact it's going to have, without anything to deter that or try and draw people over to Disney, while also raising ticket prices. And really the brand damage Disney has done the past few years is something that I think a lot of people are just now starting to catch on to. We've seen investors downgrade the Disney stock due to weakness they see in the theme park, not only in some of their numbers, but the competition arising from Universal. And sadly, I think that could be the thing that really could wake Disney up, is simply the investors starting to say something and noticing things, because I think as a company, they very much just look at that stock price and they're just looking at quarter after quarter revenue, and they haven't been looking, again, what they used to do really well, the value they used to provide. And I'm not going to make the argument like Disney never really was like building things at a rapid pace, but they didn't feel like they needed to. And you've seen the investments they drove on the timeline there that they've made into the parks, but all of it has been a reaction to Universal. So if you're a Disney fan and you don't care anything about Universal or Epic Universe, you should be thanking Universal, though, for the competition and new things that have been coming to the parks, because without that, I would probably make a guess we wouldn't have seen half, if not more, of these things being built at Disney the last few years. And while Disney will always have its crowd, but again, you look at the DAS changes, you look at the price hikes, you look at how they've just handled a lot of things. Don't forget either, they basically made it, you couldn't get an annual pass if you wanted one for a period of time, because they were trying to create, scarcity in the annual passes and not selling them except for like a couple of months out of the year. So Disney has operated from a standpoint of just being arrogant in the market in terms of they can do what they want, they can price it where they want, because they're acting as if they're the only player in town. And, they have been for a period of time, but that's not currently how it is. But Disney's still operating as that's how it is. And I think they may be in for a rude awakening with Epic Universe. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see how that ends up, affecting Disney and what it does with Universal's attendance. But I definitely think it's a risky gambit to be playing for essentially, you could argue, a third time, as they had the original Wizarding World, and then once they built the second one, and then with, Epic Universe, Disney seemingly is not learning from their past mistakes because maybe they didn't feel enough pain from it. I'm not really sure what the reasoning is, but either way, if I was Disney management or if I was a Disney stockholder, I'd be very nervous right now because, again, most of Disney's income from the entire company comes from the theme parks. It was over 70% last year of the revenue and profits were from the theme park. So you can make the argument, and I really think it's true, Disney is a theme park company. They also make movies and have a streaming service, but again, most of their money comes from the theme parks. So you have major competition encroaching onto their strongest, in terms of moneymaker asset in the company, and investors are pointing this out. So again, we're looking at a scenario where if Epic Universe opens and has massive success and really starts hitting Disney on attendance, what can they do? The only thing they can really do is just start offering discounts. I suppose if they get desperate enough, they could start bringing back Magical Express and some of the things that they used to have for free, but until they feel enough pain, I don't see that happening. So I definitely think we're in a situation where not only what Universal is offering and doing and the value that they're providing, you also have Disney essentially just sort of being short-sighted in terms of pricing people out, the way they've just sort of operated in terms of, again, the DAS and the changes they made to what used to be free with the Fast Passes, now they're charging for. And all this has changed in a matter of 5 years or less. This could be the point in which they're just now feeling the ramifications of all that, because I've always made the argument it's not like it would be overnight where something would happen. It would just be this slow, gradual fall down because people plan trips way in advance. A lot of people, it takes a couple of more trips for them to go to where they go, I don't know if it was really worth it. And now they could look at Epic Universe and be like, well, let's go over to Universal, maybe for a day or two and give that a try. But the thing that also is much different this go around for Universal when it comes to all this stuff like that, and what Disney's thinking is people have typically gone on Disney World vacations and they've added on a couple of days at Universal. That's how it's always kind of been. Well, Universal is trying to change that and get people to stay at Universal for 3, 4, 5 nights, and then maybe people add on a day or two at Disney. If that scenario happens, that will hurt Disney. So it doesn't mean that people will stop going to Disney entirely, but if they shift it to where they're going to the majority of Universal and then some at Disney, that will be a big impact on Disney's revenue, on their attendance. And then once that hits, especially with all the money coming from the theme parks, the investors are going to note this, the stockholders are going to note this, and this is potentially a really bad scenario for Disney because, again, if this does happen, there's really nothing they can do to stop it. They can't build this stuff fast enough to make a vital impact in terms of really trying to deter people from Epic Universe, especially when it's new and it's hot and people are going to be talking about it and it's got a lot of IPs that people are really excited for. I just think this is a very shaky time or iffy time for Disney, and I don't know if they recognize it. They may internally, they just don't say it publicly but from their public statements, like he was saying in the video here, it doesn't seem like that they're noticing where they're at or admitting it, and there's only so many times that you can just react to the same thing over and over again before it really starts to burn you. But obviously, we'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out. I definitely think the theme park wars are really just getting going with the opening of Epic Universe, and I definitely think Universal is going to continue with that momentum that they have to continue to add more things into their parks, and not only at the existing parks, but the expansion pads in Epic Universe. So it's a very exciting time if you're a theme park fan, because competition is great for everybody. We get new stuff with Universal. It pushes Disney to do new stuff. But I think the days in which Disney is just going to be able to dictate whatever they want to do without any pushback are gone. I think they're going to learn that the hard way, at least in my opinion. But either way, that's going to be it though for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about this video? And do you agree that Disney is underestimating Epic Universe? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.